When my sister moved in, I thought I was saving her life, but I didn't know she'd already buried a mine under our family's foundation. And it was only a matter of time before it exploded. It started on a quiet Thursday evening in March. I was cooking dinner. My husband, Daniel, was folding laundry at the kitchen table, and our daughter, Emily, was humming some Taylor Swift song in the living room. Everything felt settled, peaceful, like we'd finally reached that calm middle stretch of life you work so hard for. Then the doorbell rang. I remember wiping my hands on my apron and seeing my sister, Claire, through the frosted glass. Her shoulders were slumped forward under a gray coat, her hair messy, eyes swollen. She didn't say a word when I opened the door, just threw her arms around me and cried. The kind of crying that comes from the stomach, not the throat. I held her for a long time before she managed to speak. "He left me," she said between sobs. "He took everything, Sarah, everything." Daniel came over quietly and put a hand on her shoulder. "Come inside, Claire. You're home now." That night, as we sat at the kitchen table, she told us about the divorce. How Mark, her husband of 7 years, had filed suddenly, claimed she'd been irresponsible with money, even hinted she had a problem. She said it was all lies, that he'd manipulated her, trapped her, made her feel worthless. I believed her. Of course I did. She was my little sister. After Daniel went to bed, Claire and I stayed up late drinking tea. She looked small, fragile, lost. She promised she'd only stay a few weeks, just until I get back on my feet, she said. And I told her she could stay as long as she needed. At the time, I felt proud of that. Like I was doing what any big sister would. What I didn't realize was that the moment she unpacked her suitcase, the balance of our family shifted quietly, invisibly, towards something that would break us all. The next few weeks were fine, at least on the surface. Claire helped with Emily's school pickups, cooked dinner sometimes, even made Daniel laugh at the table again, something he hadn't done much lately. There were moments when I caught myself thinking, maybe this is good. Maybe she needs this, and maybe I need her too. We'd always been close growing up, or at least, I thought so. I was the responsible one, the achiever. Claire was more spontaneous. She'd blow her paycheck on designer shoes and cry about rent the next week. But we all forgave her because she had that charm. That soft laugh that made you forget she'd just borrowed money she might never return. Mom used to say, "Claire has a light in her that the world tries to dim." Back then, I believed that too. By the second month though, little things began to bother me. Receipts crumpled on the counter for delivery food I didn't order. Mail addressed to Claire from Credit Adjustment Services. Calls that came late at night, where she'd whisper from her room. "No, I'll get it to you soon, I promise." When I asked about it, she'd smile too quickly and say, "Just leftover stuff from the divorce, sis. Don't worry about it." I wanted to believe her, but something in her tone, that slight tremor, stayed with me. Then, one afternoon, I came home early from work. She didn't hear me come in. I found her at the kitchen table with her laptop open, clicking rapidly between what looked like betting websites, horse races, poker tournaments, a dozen tabs flashing numbers and chat windows. When she noticed me, she jumped like a guilty teenager. "Oh hey," she said, too brightly. "Just checking email." I remember standing there, unsure what to say. My stomach tightened. "Email," I repeated. "Since when does your email have flashing dice on it?" She shut the laptop. "It's nothing, Sarah. I'm fine. Don't start." Her tone was sharp enough to slice through the air. That was the first time she spoke to me like that, like I was the enemy. I tried to laugh it off, to let her keep her dignity. But the image of those screens lingered all night, their neon numbers spinning in my mind while Daniel slept beside me. The following week, our parents invited us all for Sunday lunch, one of those big, homey gatherings Mom loved. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the smell of thyme and butter thick in the air. Everything was perfect, at least until I noticed Mom slipping Claire an envelope under the table. I didn't say anything then, but on the drive home I asked Daniel, "Did you see that?" He nodded. "Yeah, I'm guessing it wasn't a birthday card. Something in my chest sank. Mom and Dad were both retired, living off savings. If Claire was borrowing money again, it meant old patterns were returning, the ones that had nearly wrecked her in her 20s. I told myself I'd talk to her gently, privately, but I didn't get the chance. Because 2 days later, I found a letter in our mailbox. It was addressed to Claire, but the envelope was half torn open, rain-soaked. The sender, Metro Credit Collections. I froze on the porch, staring at the bold black letters. Final notice. Inside, I could hear Emily laughing at some cartoon, Daniel clinking dishes in the sink. And all I could think was, what if she's dragging us into this? That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone at the dining table with that letter in front of me. The paper smelled faintly of damp ink. I read it twice, maybe 3 times, my pulse getting faster each time. It wasn't about a single debt, it was a list, multiple accounts, thousands of dollars, some in her name, some in my parents'. I felt my chest tighten as I realized what that meant. She wasn't just broke, she'd been using them, maybe even forging their names. I remember whispering to myself, no, she wouldn't. But a part of me already knew she would. Because I'd seen that look in her eyes, that mixture of charm and desperation, too many times before. The next morning, I confronted her gently. Or at least, I tried to. Claire, I found a letter in the mailbox yesterday. It was open from Metro Collections. You're in trouble, aren't you? She froze mid-sip of her coffee. Her expression hardened, then softened again like she was switching masks. Why are you snooping through my mail? She snapped. I wasn't snooping, it was torn open. Claire, you used Mom and Dad's names. There are accounts in there. Stop, she said, her voice trembling. You don't know what you're talking about. But I did. And when I looked into her eyes, I saw something worse than guilt. I saw fear. That was the moment I realized, this wasn't just a messy divorce aftermath. This was something deeper, darker, and if I didn't act soon, it would swallow all of us. For the next few days, Claire avoided me. She'd disappear for hours, leaving the house early and returning after midnight. When I asked where she went, she'd shrugged and say, job hunting, but never mentioned any company names, never brought home an application. Her phone was always glued to her hand, face turned away whenever I walked into the room. The distance between us grew like mold, quiet, spreading, easy to ignore if you didn't look directly at it. Daniel tried to calm me. Maybe she just needs time. Divorce does things to people. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to be the understanding sister. But every instinct in me said something wasn't right. Claire's smile was too practiced. Her eyes darted too much. Then one evening, while she was out, Emily came into the kitchen holding Claire's purse. Mom, Aunt Claire said I could borrow her lip gloss, but I can't find it. Can you help me look? I took the purse, meaning to set it aside. But as I moved it, something heavy slid out, a small black notebook, the edges frayed, elastic band barely holding it shut. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside were pages of numbers, dates, dollar amounts, names. At first, it looked like some kind of budget planner. Then I realized the entries weren't earnings, they were bets. Each page listed wagers, horse races, casino games, online usernames, balances lost and owed. The last few pages made my blood run cold. Mom's name was written beside several amounts, and Dad's, too. Beside them, loan repay soon, but there were no repayments written anywhere. My heart pounded as I flipped further. The total at the bottom of one page was over $48,000. I sat down hard on the kitchen chair, the notebook shaking in my hands. It felt like looking at a confession, one written in ink instead of words. That night, when Claire returned, I was waiting. Where were you? I asked softly. She set her bag down. Out. Why? With who? She laughed light, careless, but her voice cracked slightly. You sound like Mom. I held up the notebook. Her smile vanished. Where did you get that? She whispered. Emily found it. You told me it was just leftover debt from the divorce. You lied. Her hands trembled. For a moment, she said nothing, then, as if something snapped inside her, she shouted, "You don't understand, Sarah. You never understand." "Then make me understand," I said. My voice was shaking too, but I didn't back down. Tears filled her eyes. It started small. After Mark left, I was drowning. I thought maybe I could win some money back, get ahead before the bills hit. But every time I tried to fix it, it got worse. Worse. How? I borrowed from Mom, then Dad. I told them it was for a new apartment, for court fees. I thought I could pay it back. She rubbed her forehead, voice breaking. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. My throat tightened. "Claire, they don't have much. You know that." She nodded, collapsing into a chair. I know. I was going to stop. But then I started getting calls, threats. She stopped herself. "Threats from who?" I pressed. She shook her head violently. "It doesn't matter. I'll handle it." Her words scared me more than if she'd said the truth. Because "I'll handle it" meant she wasn't done. Over the next week, things spiraled fast. Claire stopped eating dinner with us. She'd lock herself in her room for hours, sometimes pacing, sometimes crying. I overheard her on the phone once, whispering, "Please, just give me another week. I swear, I'll get the money." The next day, $400 disappeared from our joint grocery account. When I asked Daniel, he said, "Maybe an error." But I checked the transactions. Cash withdrawal. ATM near the downtown casino. I confronted Claire again, this time with less patience. "Are you using our money now?" I demanded. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "No." But her voice wavered, and I saw the panic flicker behind her calm facade. That's when I realized she wasn't just gambling for herself anymore. She was trying to buy time. For what? I didn't know. The next turning point came from my mother. She called one morning, her voice trembling. "Sarah, did Claire mention anything about our savings account?" My stomach dropped. "Why?" "Well," Mom said slowly, "your father went to check the balance for the property taxes, and it's lower. Much lower. There's a withdrawal we don't remember making. It says authorized user, but we only added Claire months ago, after her divorce. She said she needed access to help pay bills." My blood ran cold. "How much, Mom?" "Around 23,000. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Mom added, "Please don't tell her we called. Maybe it's just a mistake." But I already knew it wasn't. That night, I sat in the dark living room, waiting for Claire to come home. Daniel stood behind me, quiet, his arms crossed. When she finally walked in, she froze at the sight of us. "What's going on?" she asked carefully. I handed her the printed bank statement. "You tell me." She glanced at it, then looked away. "You went through Mom's accounts." "No. She called me. She's terrified." "Claire, did you take their savings?" "I borrowed it," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Just until I can pay it back." "With what?" I snapped. "You don't even have a job." Her lip trembled. "I'm close to a big win, Sarah. I can fix it." Daniel exhaled sharply, muttering, "God help us." I stared at her. The girl who used to braid my hair before school, who used to sneak chocolate chips into our oatmeal, who'd once promised me she'd never turn into Mom and Dad's disappointment. And yet here we were. "You have to tell them the truth," I said, "before they find out on their own." "No," she screamed, stepping back. "You'll ruin everything. You don't know what they'll do." Her desperation filled the room like smoke, suffocating, choking. I wanted to shake her, to make her see the destruction she'd caused. But all I could do was whisper, "Claire, you already did." She stormed off, slamming her bedroom door so hard that Emily woke up crying. I held my daughter until she fell asleep again, my heart hollow and trembling. When the house finally went silent, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the shadows crawling across the wall, and realized something simple and terrible. If I didn't intervene soon, it wouldn't just be Mom and Dad she destroyed. It would be all of us. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cold mug of tea in front of me. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. It felt strange how a place that once held laughter could now feel like a courtroom. My husband, Daniel, came downstairs quietly. He'd heard everything the night before. The look on his face was that mix of sympathy and hesitation, the kind that said, "I want to help, but I don't want to make it worse." "She's still asleep?" he asked softly. I nodded, "Yeah. Or pretending to be." He sighed and sat across from me. "You need to tell your parents, Maya. They deserve to know." I closed my eyes. "If I do, it'll destroy them. You know how fragile Dad's health is. Mom will blame herself for not seeing it. And," I hesitated, "and despite everything, she's still my sister." Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and firm. "But she's been lying to all of you for years. Protecting her means letting her keep doing it. You know that." He was right. But right didn't make it easier. I remembered how Anna used to sit by Dad's bedside when he was recovering from surgery, reading his favorite mystery novels out loud. She'd spoon-feed him soup, tell him jokes, make him smile when the rest of us were falling apart. That girl, the caring, selfless Anna, couldn't be the same one who'd stolen from him. Could she? But denial is a comfortable poison. I'd lived on it for too long. I finally said, "I'll talk to her first. Just me and her." Daniel nodded, "Then talk, don't wait too long." Anna emerged from her room late that afternoon. Her hair was tangled, and she wore the same sweatshirt from the night before. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. She poured herself coffee and tried to act normal. "So, big sister's been playing detective again," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. I stayed quiet. After a long pause, she said, "I know what you're thinking, and before you start, I didn't steal anything. I just borrowed what was owed to me." "Owed to you," I repeated slowly. "Anna, they gave you everything. They paid for your college. They helped you with the down payment for your first house. They gave you, too," she interrupted, her voice rising. "You got married early, had your picture-perfect life. I had nothing when Mike left me. Nothing but debts and judgment. You think I wanted to take their money? I did what I had to do. By lying to them, by lying to me," I shot back. She slammed her cup on the counter, coffee splashing. "You wouldn't understand. You've never been desperate like that." Her words cut deep because, in a way, she was right. I had never been that desperate. But she didn't see that desperation didn't justify deception. "Anna," I said quietly, "if you don't tell them the truth, I will." She froze, her eyes wide and wet. "You wouldn't dare." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I have to. Because they're still waiting for you to come home for dinner tonight. They still think you're just recovering." She dropped her gaze, her lips trembling. "Please, Maya, just give me a little time. I'll fix it. I'll find a way." "How?" "With more lies." She didn't answer. That silence told me everything I needed to know. That evening, I drove to my parents' house alone. The sun was setting, casting a deep orange hue across the street where we'd grown up. It was the same neighborhood where Anna and I used to ride bikes, sharing melted popsicles and secrets. Now I was bringing a different kind of secret home, one that could break the family in half. Mom opened the door before I even knocked. "Maya, what a surprise. Come in, come in." Her warmth hit me like a wave. I almost turned back right there. Dad was in the living room, flipping through the newspaper. He looked up with a smile that made my heart ache. "Hey, kiddo, everything okay?" I swallowed hard. "Can we talk?" Mom must have sensed something because she quickly turned off the TV and sat down beside Dad. "What's going on?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, my heart pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. Finally, I said it. "It's about Anna." Their expressions shifted instantly: concern, fear, love all mixed together. I told them everything. The gambling, the debts, the missing money, the bank account. Every word felt like peeling off a bandage that had grown into my skin. Mom gasped softly, covering her mouth. Dad's eyes went wide, then narrow, as though he were trying to make sense of something impossible. When I finished, the silence that followed was unbearable. Mom whispered, "No, not our Anna." Dad's hands trembled. He leaned back, his face pale. I knew she was hiding something, but this. I reached out to them. She needs help. Real help, not just money or sympathy. She needs to face this. Mom nodded slowly, tears streaming down her cheeks. She's still our daughter. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. But she's also an adult. And we can't keep saving her from the truth. Dad exhaled deeply, as though the air itself had become heavier. Call her. Tell her to come home. We'll talk together. I did. That call was the hardest thing I'd ever made. Anna arrived an hour later. She looked small, fragile, like a shadow of the sister I once knew. The confrontation that followed was quiet to quiet. No yelling, no slamming doors. Just heartbreak spoken in low voices. Mom wept. Dad sat in silence for most of it, eyes glistening. Anna tried to explain, but every excuse dissolved under the weight of truth. At one point, she turned to me and whispered, "Are you happy now?" I didn't answer, because happiness had nothing to do with it. By the end of the night, my parents agreed to help her, but not without boundaries. They would pay off part of her debt, on the condition that she attend therapy and relinquish control of her finances until she could rebuild trust. It wasn't punishment, it was mercy, tough, painful mercy. As I drove home that night, I felt both lighter and heavier at once. I'd done the right thing. But doing the right thing rarely feels good in the moment. And deep down, I wondered, would she ever forgive me? The next few days were a blur of whispers and half-answered phone calls. In families like ours, secrets never stay secret for long. By the weekend, my aunt had called, then my cousin, then a family friend who just wanted to check on everyone. I didn't have to ask how they found out. Small towns have their own way of spreading bad news faster than light. Anna stopped leaving her room. Mom would knock softly, leave food by the door, whispering, "Eat something, sweetheart." But most plates came back untouched. Dad, meanwhile, moved through the house like a ghost, quiet, tired, eyes distant. He'd always been proud of how he raised his daughters. Two strong women, he'd say, and now one of those women had broken something he didn't know how to fix. One evening I went to check on him. He was sitting on the back porch, the same place he used to teach us how to whistle through our fingers. The fading sun painted his wrinkles gold. He didn't turn to look at me when he said, "You did the right thing, Maya. You know that, right?" I nodded, sitting beside him. "I know, but it doesn't feel like it." He sighed. "It's not supposed to. Doing right by family. It's never clean. It's love and pain, mixed together." He stared into the distance for a long while before adding, "She reminds me of your Uncle Peter. He had the same streak, hiding problems until they swallowed him whole. I just wish I'd seen it sooner." There was a quietness in his tone that scared me, the quiet that comes from a father realizing he can't protect his child anymore. 2 weeks later, the situation escalated. One of the people Anna owed money to, a local acquaintance, showed up at my parents' house. He wasn't violent, just desperate. But his arrival changed everything. Mom called me, her voice trembling. "Maya, there's a man here asking for Anna. He says she owes him $8,000. What do I do?" I was already in the car before she finished the sentence. When I arrived, the man was standing in the driveway, arms crossed, wearing the kind of frustration that comes from being lied to too many times. Anna was inside, crying, while Dad tried to talk sense into him. "Sir," I said, stepping in, "you need to leave. This isn't the place for this conversation." He looked at me sharply. "I don't want trouble, lady. But your sister promised to pay. She said your father would cover it. She said the family always bails her out." That sentence hit me like a slap, because it was true. We always had. Before I could respond, Dad said calmly, "You'll get your money. But not today." Give us a week. The man hesitated, then nodded. A week after that, I'll go to the police. When he left, Mom broke down completely. It's never going to end, is it? She cried. Anna stood in the corner, shaking, whispering, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Her words sounded small, almost childlike, but the damage was anything but small. That night, Dad made a decision. He told Anna she had to move out. You can stay with your friend Clara for a while, he said softly. We'll help you get counseling, but you can't stay here anymore. Anna's eyes widened in disbelief. You're kicking me out. Mom tried to intervene, but Dad shook his head. We love you, Anna. But love isn't the same as enabling. She looked at me then, her eyes wild. You did this. You turned them against me. I didn't answer, because part of me feared she was right, not because I'd lied, but because I'd told the truth. When Anna left the next morning, she didn't say goodbye. She just packed 2 suitcases, slipped out before sunrise, and drove away in her old silver car. The sound of that engine fading down the street haunted me for days. Mom barely spoke for a week. She moved through the house like she was looking for something that wasn't there anymore. I tried to visit every evening, bringing dinner, helping with chores, but nothing filled the silence Anna left behind. One night, while I was washing dishes, Mom suddenly said, Do you remember when she was 10? She used to save her pocket money to buy flowers for me on Fridays. I smiled faintly. Yeah, daisies. She always said they looked happy. Mom's voice broke. Where did that little girl go, Maya? I didn't know how to answer, because the truth was, that little girl had grown up in a world that didn't go easy on her. The divorce, the debts, the loneliness, they'd chipped away at her until she started reaching for whatever made the pain stop, even if it meant betraying us. A few months passed. I didn't hear from Anna, though I knew she was seeing a therapist. Dad had arranged it quietly. He also paid off the last of her debts, but he didn't tell her. He just said, sometimes mercy doesn't need to be known. Then, one afternoon in early spring, she called. Her voice was hesitant, softer than I remembered. Hey, it's me. I felt my chest tighten. Hi, Anna. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For all of it. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I'm trying. I've been going to therapy. I even started working part-time at a cafe. That's good, I said quietly. I'm glad. There was a pause. Then she asked, Do you think Mom and Dad would ever want to see me again? I looked out the window at the blooming jasmine vines on my fence. The air smelled like renewal. Yes, I said finally. They've been waiting. She started crying. Thank you, Maya, for not giving up on me. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, the phone still warm in my hand. For the first time in months, I felt something loosen inside me. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about erasing what happened. Maybe it was about making room for who someone could still become. 2 weeks later, Anna came home for dinner. We all sat around the same table where the truth had first shattered us. The food was simple: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and Mom's apple pie. It felt like a fragile truce, stitched together with cautious smiles and long silences. But somewhere between laughter and tears, something shifted. Dad raised his glass and said, To family, even when we break, we find a way to mend. We all clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long while, it felt real. It's strange how healing doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't announce itself or ask for applause. It just slips in quietly, one small act at a time. After that dinner, Anna started visiting once a week. At first, she'd stay only an hour, drink tea, talk a little, leave before things got too heavy. But over time, the visits stretched longer. She'd help Mom in the kitchen, or sit with Dad on the porch, just talking about the weather, the garden, the little things that don't seem important until you realize they're everything. The cracks between us didn't vanish. They were still there, but we'd stopped pretending they weren't. And somehow, that honesty became its own kind of glue. I noticed changes in Anna too. She spoke slower, listened more. She'd lost that restless look in her eyes. the one that used to dart from corner to corner, as if she was always searching for an escape. One evening, she came over to my house carrying a small box. "I want to show you something," she said. Inside were a few worn notebooks. I flipped one open and saw careful handwriting filling every page. Lists, journal entries, budget plans. On the first page, she had written, "Things I owe and not just money." She laughed softly when I read it aloud. "My therapist told me to write down every person or thing I'd hurt, and how I could make it right. I'm still on page 3. I smiled. "That's a good place to start." We sat together on my couch, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like I was talking to a stranger wearing my sister's face. It felt like the real Anna, fragile, yes, but honest. A few months later, something unexpected happened. Dad had a mild heart attack. Nothing fatal, thank God, but enough to shake us all. He was hospitalized for a week, and during that time, Anna never left his side. She read to him, brought him homemade soup, even argued with the nurses like a protective lioness. One afternoon, as I sat by Dad's bed, he said quietly, "You know, I used to think your sister would be the one who needed saving forever. But I think maybe she's saving us now." And in a strange way, he was right, because that hospital stay did something none of us could have planned. It pulled us back together. It reminded us what mattered. When Dad was discharged, he insisted on walking out of the hospital himself, holding both our hands. I remember thinking, maybe families don't heal in apologies or grand gestures. Maybe they heal in shared steps like this. One Sunday evening, a few weeks later, we had a barbecue in the backyard, just like old times. The air smelled of grilled corn and charcoal. The kids from next door were laughing over the fence. And Dad had put on that old record he loved, the one that crackled just a little between songs. Anna was setting the table when she said something that made me pause. "You know, I used to think you hated me." I looked at her, surprised. "I never hated you. I hated what you did." She nodded. "That's fair. But for a long time, I couldn't tell the difference." There was something raw but beautiful in that honesty. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Well, I'm glad you can now." She smiled, not the nervous, guilty smile I'd grown used to, but something softer, free. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone on the porch. The same porch where Dad and I had talked months earlier, when everything still felt broken beyond repair. The air was cool, carrying the scent of cut grass and wood smoke. I could hear faint laughter from Anna's car as she drove away. I closed my eyes and thought about how far we'd come. There had been a time when I thought exposing Anna's secret would destroy us. And maybe, for a while, it did. But sometimes destruction is just the first stage of rebuilding, the clearing of what's rotten so something real can grow again. A few weeks later, I got a letter from Anna. A real letter, in her handwriting. Inside was a short note. "Maya, I've started volunteering at a financial counseling center. I thought helping others avoid the mistakes I made might be my way of paying it forward. I don't know if I'll ever make it up to you, to Mom and Dad, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying. Love, Anna." I cried when I read it. Not because it was sad, but because it was so full of truth, raw, imperfect, but hopeful. I pinned that letter on my refrigerator. It's still there. Every time I see it, I'm reminded that forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a practice. In the months that followed, our family found a new rhythm. Mom started smiling again. Dad spent mornings in his garden. Anna was rebuilding her life one careful step at a time. And I finally let myself stop carrying the guilt of being the one who exposed it all. Because now I understood exposing the truth didn't destroy my family. Hiding it would have. On the 1-year anniversary of that first confrontation, we all met at my parents' house for dinner. It wasn't a celebration, exactly, more like a quiet acknowledgement of survival. After dinner, as we sat watching the sunset, Anna turned to me and said, "You know what the hardest part was?" "What?" I asked, looking at myself without the lies. "But the second hardest thing," she added with a small laugh, "was realizing how much I still needed you." I smiled and said, "Good. Because you still have me. She leaned her head on my shoulder. For a long moment, we just sat there, two sisters who had been through the storm and somehow found their way back. You know, if someone had told me a year ago that my sister and I would sit side by side again, laughing over dinner, I would have never believed them. Back then, all I could see was betrayal, lies, broken trust that I thought could never be mended. But life has a strange way of testing the heart, not to break it, but to open it. I learned that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones fighting the deepest battles within themselves. And while love doesn't excuse what they did, it can give us the strength to see why they did it. When Anna walked into my house that first day after her divorce, I thought I was saving her. But what I didn't realize was that we'd end up saving each other in different ways. She taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing to build something new in its shadow. And maybe that's what family is. Not perfection, but persistence. The quiet, everyday decision to keep showing up, even when it hurts. Now, when I sit on that porch and watch the light fade behind the trees, I think about how close we came to losing everything, and how, somehow, truth, the very thing that shattered us, became the bridge that brought us back together. So if you're listening to this, and someone in your life has betrayed your trust, I won't tell you to forgive them right away. Take your time. Feel the hurt. Let it change you if it must. But when you're ready, when the anger softens into understanding, remember that healing doesn't always mean reconciliation, but it does begin with honesty. Because family isn't defined by the absence of mistakes. It's defined by the courage to face them together. Tell me, would you have exposed your sister's secret if it meant saving the rest of your family? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes, the hardest stories to tell are the ones that heal us most.